Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you here to this webinar today, focusing on the updates and changes to the way that we'll be inspecting early years schools and colleges from November and inspections of ITE from January 2026. My name's Claire, and I'm Deputy Director for Inclusive Education here at Ofsted. And I'm really pleased today to be joined by colleagues who've also been instrumental in the development of our new approach. Colleagues, I'm going to come to you to introduce yourself. So, Helen, did you want to go first?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Helen Matthews. I'm one of His Majesty's Inspectors and Deputy Director for Inspection Improvements. So, welcome.
Thank you very much, Helen. And Adam, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Adam Sproston. I'm also one of His Majesty's Inspectors and responsible for Send AP at Ofsted. So great to have you here.
Thanks very much both for joining us today. We will be turning our cameras off just so that people can focus on the content, and then we'll pop them back on at the end when we come to questions. So, just a quick outline of the session then. We're determined to raise standards and improve lives with disadvantaged and vulnerable children and learners at the heart of what we do. We know that our work is valued by children, parents, carers, and decision makers, but we also know that we need to reset our relationship with the sectors that we inspect and regulate. Last year's Big Listen heard from many thousands of parents and professionals whose feedback has helped us to make changes to the way that we work. This year, we consulted on a new approach to inspecting education providers from this autumn. This includes introducing a new look Ofsted report card for parents and carers. We'll be sharing with you the changes we'll be making from November 2025 and what they mean for schools, in particular, alternative provision. We've allowed 10 minutes towards the end of this webinar to answer any questions that you may have. We have had a lot of pre-submitted questions, so thank you very much for those of you that took the time to submit those. We've tried to weave as many answers to those questions as we can into our presentation, but any that we want to call out, we'll come to those at the end. And please do continue to submit questions as we go, and we'll do our best to answer those as we get through the session. Every one of us has a desire to work for all pupils, children and learners, apprentices and trainees to receive a high quality of education and training, an education that enables everyone to achieve, belong and thrive, and of course, to achieve great outcomes. This is about rising standards. Children get one childhood and we will continue to put them first. We want great outcomes for all of our children. And if we get it right for the most vulnerable, we get it right for all. For the first time, inclusion will be the focus of every inspection. Parents have told us that they want better and more detailed information about where their child's school, nursery, or college, with strengths and areas for improvement highlighted. We want to celebrate a school's strengths, validate what leaders are telling us about their school, and work with leaders to highlight what needs developing further. We remain committed to improving how it feels to be inspected while continuing to encourage and support providers to raise standards. We do not expect any provider to be doing more than it needs to just for Ofsted. The inspection toolkit is based on statutory duties and guidance, non statutory guidance, professional standards, research, and inspection evidence. We're committed to working with leaders to determine the areas of inspection focus and agree the most appropriate activities tailored to the specific provider. So let's have a little look at the journey so far. Following last year's Big Listen, we set out our ambition to reset relationships with the professionals we inspect and regulate while maintaining the confidence of children, parents, and carers. This included renewing the education inspection framework and introducing new report cards. In February 2025, our 12-week consultation set out a series of proposals for change, covering early years, state-funded schools, non-association independent schools, further education and skills, and ITE providers. Over 6,500 responses came in, alongside insights from focus groups, expert discussions, test visits, and independent research. Today's changes are grounded in that rich evidence. Alongside our consultation response, which is available on gov.uk, we've published updated inspection toolkits and operating guides that reflect a more empathetic, child-focused approach, especially for those who are disadvantaged or vulnerable, whilst making sure we don't lose sight of our core purpose and our collective drive to raise standards. The reforms will come into effect in November 2025 for early years, state-funded schools and further education colleges. The changes will come into effect for ITE and independent schools in January. So a summary of our changes then. Our proposals were not set in stone. We've carefully listened to all of the feedback from the consultation and we have tested and further refined our methodology. We believe our new approach represents the right balance between the interests of parents and children and the wishes of education professionals. Our core purpose and driving mission is to keep children and learners safe and improve their lives. The key changes include a new inspection report card to highlight excellence and identify areas for improvement, driving high and rising standards. The report card will provide more nuance for parents and providers, combining at a glance grades with narrative summaries of strengths and areas for improvement. Following extensive feedback and user testing of February's proposed version, the report card has been redesigned to make it more accessible, particularly on mobile devices. We're also introducing a new 5-point grading scale. This is to set high expectations while encouraging improvement where it's needed. In response to feedback from professionals and parents about the proposed terminology, the final set of grades has changed to urgent improvement, needs attention, expected standard, strong standard, exceptional. This is to identify the very best provision in the country. In a change from the initial proposals, providers will not be asked to submit case studies for approval. Instead, inspectors will evaluate exceptional practice by applying the toolkit, subject to the usual quality assurance and consistency checking. We also have a renewed focus on inclusion by introducing a new inclusion evaluation area to help break down barriers to learning and well-being. Inspectors will evaluate whether education providers are providing high quality support for all children and learners, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds, those who have SEND, and those who are known or have ever been known to children's social care. New inspection toolkits for grading providers. Toolkits show providers and inspectors the evaluation areas that we'll focus on and how we'll assess and grade providers. There is a wider range of evaluation areas than in our current methodology, but following feedback, the number of core evaluation areas has been streamlined. In response to feedback, the definitions of grades have been tightened to more clearly differentiate between them. The standards covered in the toolkits have also been slimmed down to provide greater clarity on the evidence inspectors will assess. We're also introducing a new inspection methodology to reduce workload for the education workforce. Much of our inspection methodology comprises of inspection activities you will already be familiar with, such as speaking with parents and pupils and visiting lessons. The toolkits are designed to assess the professional standards, statutory and non-statutory requirements already placed on schools. New operating guides set out the times at which inspectors can arrive on site and the suggested latest times they should be departing to cap the length of inspection days. We will evaluate providers' work to support and promote leader and staff well-being. This will be considered as part of the leadership and governance evaluation area. Inspection findings will be grounded in a clear understanding of each provider's unique circumstances. The new operating guides set out how leaders and inspectors will reflect on a provider's context and priorities. We're also introducing a new online insights platform, Ofsted Explore an Area, which will give parents key information about the education and care services in their local area. We have a new system for monitoring schools where improvement is needed to offer reassurance to parents and carers. These inspections will allow providers to improve needs attention grades and have improvements recognised more quickly. To drive consistent and fair inspections, school and independent school inspections will be led by full-time His Majesty's inspectors. These experienced inspectors will oversee the inspection, building a professional relationship with the leaders, including any nominee, to deliver a more collaborative experience. In addition, Ofsted will introduce a programme of work to assess consistency in school inspections, including having a senior inspector shadow a sample of live inspections to guide and advise the inspection team. Post-inspection, any initial differences between the senior inspector and the team will be analysed. We're also putting increased resource and training for inspection teams to drive quality and consistency. There will be an additional school inspector to add capacities as a team, allowing the lead inspector to spend more time with leaders, including any nominee, as well as overseeing and quality assuring the inspection. Let's look in more detail at our new approach. We begin with an overview. We will put children first, breaking down barriers by raising standards, especially for the most disadvantaged and vulnerable. We will improve the way we report the content of inspection findings to parents and carers. We will improve the look and feel of inspection for education providers and professionals with a more collaborative approach. We will maintain our focus on having care and concern for the well-being and workload of those we inspect. We will take context into greater account on inspection. We'll make inspections consistent in approach and continue to improve our process for allowing leaders to raise any issues about their inspection. We will provide constructive advice to improve based on conversations with leaders. And finally, we're different by design. We have further tailored our inspection approach to each remit and provision type within them. For example, we've worked to align regulation and inspection standards in early years. And now to inclusion. We've strengthened our approach to inclusion. We will put children first, breaking down barriers by raising standards, especially for the disadvantaged and vulnerable. This is why we're introducing a separate inclusion evaluation area, and inclusion will also be a key theme across our other evaluation areas. Our inspectors will look at how schools are addressing barriers to learning for all pupils. We will always start with those the government asks providers to focus on, whether through school statutory obligations or non-statutory guidance. That is why we are particularly emphasising those from socio-economically disadvantaged backgrounds, those with SEND, and those known or previously known to children's social care. We will also evaluate how well schools ensure that there is high quality support for all children and learners who may face other barriers to their learning and/or well-being. As part of understanding the barriers most relevant to a school, inspectors will make use of demographic data to understand a school's cohort, but crucially, they will speak with leaders to understand the context in which the school is working and the particular barriers their pupils may face. As inspectors form their evaluation of the inclusion evaluation area, they will consider the systems and processes that leaders put in place to identify the needs of children and learners at their provision and address and review the support that they receive. In addition to that, each area of the toolkit will have a focus on those pupils who face the greatest barriers to ensure that things are working well for all pupils, be that teaching and curriculum, the school's practice around attendance and behaviour, or personal development and well-being. When we talk about a strengthened focus on inclusion, we are talking about how inspectors will gather evidence in a rounded and meaningful way. This is not about one-off checks. It is about understanding how leaders support every pupil, especially those who face barriers to learning and/or well-being. First, inspectors will talk with leaders about how pupils' needs are identified and met. This professional dialogue helps us to understand the systems in place and how leaders monitor whether the support is making a difference. Second, inspectors will look at contextual data. The numbers alone do not tell the full story, but they help frame questions, which we will build on through discussion with leaders and staff. Third, there will be case sampling. This is a form of initial evidence gathering which helps us to understand the outcomes and experiences of pupils who face barriers. It involves selecting a small sample of pupils and tracking them across inspection activities to gain a deeper understanding of their experiences and outcomes. This is then connected to wider evidence about the outcomes experiences for all pupils. Case sampling is not the same as a case study. We do not ask or require any staff to prepare case studies for an inspection. Finally, inspectors will go on learning walks with leaders. These are opportunities to evaluate inclusion in action across classrooms and subjects, connecting what leaders tell us with what pupils are experiencing day to day. By combining these approaches, inspectors build a picture that is fair, evidence-based, and rooted in the reality of each school's context. In response to what we heard in the consultation, we've reduced the number of evaluation areas from those we initially proposed. The evaluation areas are now those you see on screen. You will see that behaviour and attendance now form one evaluation area, and that curriculum and teaching form one evaluation area. I'll now hand over to Helen, who's going to talk you through our new toolkits.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, so our toolkits show providers and inspectors the evaluation areas that we'll focus on, and within them, the standards we will evaluate to inform our grading. The inspection toolkit is based on statutory duties and non statutory guidance, professional standards, research, and inspection evidence. The toolkit is not a checklist, and that's important to state. It is used to guide conversations, reflect on evidence, and make sure grades reflect the evidence gathered. It supports a shared understanding and discussion of the strengths of the school's work, its context, and areas for further exploration. Inspectors will apply the toolkit evaluation areas, themes, and standards, tailoring activities to each school's context. As we have said, nothing in the standards set out in the toolkits should add to a school's workload, nor do we expect schools or providers to have completed any formal self evaluation. However, feel free to use the toolkit to support your own continuing improvement, and we will expect leaders to share their strengths, successes, and priorities with us on inspection. We've spent time carefully reflecting on these evaluation areas in our consultation and different remits. So let's have a look at one of the toolkits. There is a covering page for each evaluation area, which includes a summative statement at the top. This is designed to help you and inspectors to see at a glance what the evaluation area is about. Then there follows a statement to remind us that our grading standards are based on what schools are already required to do. As Sir Martin Oliver stated, the toolkit will make it clearer than we ever have that schools and providers shouldn't be doing anything just for the days that our inspectors come in. They shouldn't be spending a single minute or penny on anything that isn't in the best interests of your children, pupils, and learners. Following that statement, the toolkit sets out the most significant contributory factors that underpin our approaches to evidence gathering and grading. This is very much based on the research that underpinned the education inspection framework. We have been clear that our renewed framework will ensure that there is consistency in inspection practice. We have also made sure that the toolkit is reflective of each remit and the differing phases and provider types within it. In our toolkit, we've included an explanation of how the toolkit should be applied within different school types. For example, in curriculum and teaching, inspectors will consider what practice looks like primary, in secondary, and post 16. So in early years, we will look at how well the youngest children are developing strong foundations, such as early communication, language, and number skills. In primary, the focus is on how well leaders ensure that pupils build secure knowledge and skills across the curriculum, with reading and mathematics at the core. And in secondary, inspectors will consider how the curriculum builds subject expertise and supports progression. While for post 16, we will look at how well the provision equips young people for the next stage of their education, training, or work. In short, the toolkit seeks to make it clear how we will apply each evaluation area in a school like yours and what you can expect inspectors to be looking at in practice. Once we've set out what an evaluation area covers, the toolkit then moves into more detail about the kinds of evidence inspectors will gather. Each evaluation area considers themes, as you see on the slide, and below that, prompts that guide inspectors, conversations, and observations. Each evaluation area starts with a theme about strategic leadership of that area and ends with a theme about inclusive practices in that area. These prompts are most definitely not a checklist. They are there to help inspectors think about the right questions, to explore evidence in context, and to make sure that our evaluations are consistent and fair. Teaching, inspectors will consider how well the curriculum is sequenced or how teachers adapt their approaches for pupils with different starting points. In leadership, prompts will focus on how leaders set direction, monitor impact, and support development. So, the key takeaway from this slide is that the toolkit makes inspection more transparent. Leaders can see the themes inspectors will explore and the types of questions that will help shape evidence gathering. As we come to the next section, we see that each evaluation area in the toolkit is graded on a 5-point scale. This is with the exception of safeguarding, which continues to be met, not met. What you can see here are the grades we expect to see most often on inspection. Needs attention in the amber, expected standard in the pale green, and strong standard in the dark green. Importantly, one clear distinction is that we will be looking for a secure fit, not a best fit. That is, to meet the expected standard, a school will need to meet all of the standards in that column. To meet the strong standard, a school will need to meet all the standards in expected and in strong. You will see words such as typically and generally in the expected standard. And this is to recognise that the expected standard is not about perfection. For example, you might have a subject area that is being developed currently, but does not quite meet the same standard as others consistently. If that was the case, you may still be graded as having a secure fit with the expected standard in the relevant evaluation areas. Expected standard to have raised the bar, but consistently we want it to be achievable. The needs attention column contains indicators and not standards. An evaluation area is likely to be needs attention when there is not a secure fit for the expected standard. The indicators in this column are designed to exemplify why a provider may not be meeting the expected standard. These indicators are deliberately worded positively to acknowledge what leaders are doing, but also pointing out where something needs attention as it is not a secure fit with the expected standard. We have said all along that we expect more schools to have varied grade profiles, including potentially areas that need attention. Sir Martin Oliver has often referenced the need for nuanced grading, stating that grades for specific evaluation areas will allow for a more detailed and representative assessment. Individual grading of the evaluation areas will enable parents and carers to be able to see in much more detail what is special about your school, what it does well, and what it's working on. As Lee Austin, our National Director, has stated, needs attention is not a fail. It's a bit like if you take your car to an MOT and it passes, but it gets an advisory notice. If you don't pay attention to this, this could be a problem in the future. On the previous slide, we looked at the grades that inspectors will use the most often. Here we're focusing on the two ends of the scale that we expect to use much, much less frequently: urgent improvement in the red and exceptional in the dark blue. Urgent improvement applies when the expected standards have clearly not been met and where there are serious concerns about the impact of the school's work in the relevant evaluation area. The indicators explain what this might look like in practice. These are occasions when significant improvement is needed. At the far end of the scale is exceptional. The grade is for schools where the evidence shows that standards are not only strong, but truly transformational. That means everything in the strong column is already being met securely and consistently, and leaders are making a sustained difference for pupils. Both urgent improvement and exceptional are important parts of the 5-part scale. but they will be much less common in practice. The majority of evaluations will fall into the middle 3 grades that we looked at on the previous slide. Now I'm going to bring in Adam, who's going to take you through what this will look like and feel like on a live inspection. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Helen. So let's remind ourselves of some of the key aspects that are underpinning our renewed approach. We're moving towards a more supportive, empathetic approach to inspection in which the starting point will be expected standard. We will further take each provider's context into account. We will adopt a more collaborative approach. We have extensively tested our inspection methodology, revising our approach to make inspection feel a more collaborative process. We will be consistent in our approach to inspections and continue to improve our process for providers to feedback about their inspection experience. While no inspection will be the same due to every school being different, we have ensured that inspectors will apply the inspection methodology consistently. We will provide constructive advice to improve based on inspection evidence and conversations with leaders. And we will do all of this through a values-driven approach to inspections, that which is professional, empathetic, respectful, and courteous. The Ofsted Academy will run the largest package of training Ofsted has ever offered for an inspection launch to inspectors, alongside webinars like these and events for education professionals. Over the next few slides, we will provide a broad overview of the inspection process. Before inspectors arrive, there are several steps that help to get the inspection off to a smooth start. Some of this will feel familiar, but there are some important changes too. In preparing for the inspection, inspectors will review information such as published data, the school's website, and local authority information. This preparation is not about catching schools out, but making sure that inspectors are able to engage with you during the inspection planning call to better understand your context and priorities. Inspectors' first contact is through the notification call. While this is still the moment you are formally told about the inspection, it is more than a quick announcement. Inspectors will use it to begin a constructive and professional dialogue, setting the tone for the whole inspection. They will ask about your context, check well-being, and agree a time for the planning call. Schools will be asked to nominate someone to act as the main link with the inspection team. We call them the nominee. They are to help with communication, logistics, and making sure that your context is properly understood. It's not compulsory, and you are not disadvantaged if you choose not to have a nominee. There is optional training available for nominees to further support them in this role. The planning call that follows is a longer, collaborative conversation. Inspectors will listen to leaders outline the school's context, successes, strengths, and priorities. They will work with you to co-construct the day one timetable, confirm any reasonable adjustments, and discuss how the evidence will be gathered. The aim is to make sure inspectors arrive already clear about your school's specific circumstances and the things that matter most in your school. So, while the steps we have just gone through, some may sound familiar, but what has changed is the emphasis. More consideration of context from the very first phone call, and a more collaborative approach to shaping the inspection before inspectors arrive on site. Inspectors will gather evidence to enable them to celebrate strengths in pupils' achievement, belonging, and ability to thrive, validate leaders' priorities and progress, highlight priorities for improvement. Inspectors will start with a brief meeting with school leaders and, if requested, may speak with staff. The lead inspector will check the single central record early on. The leaders will be able to walk their school with the lead HMI. This is an important opportunity for leaders to show the lead inspector their context. First-hand evidence gathering with a strong focus on pupils' experiences begins early, particularly how pupils are included and kept safe. Inspectors will speak with pupils during lessons and social times, visit classrooms alongside leaders, and walk the school to connect leadership priorities with what pupils actually experience. These activities allow for ongoing professional dialogue between inspectors and leaders. Inspectors will look closely at how support is provided to pupils who may need extra help, using case sampling to understand how inclusion works in practice. This broad approach helps build a clear picture of how well the school supports pupils to achieve, belong, and thrive. Inspectors may carry laptops during their visits, but not always. When they don't, they'll need time back in the team room to record their observations. There'll be several opportunities for leaders and the nominee, where there is one, to meet with the inspection team to discuss emerging findings. The first of these reflective meetings typically takes place around lunchtime on day one. These discussions promote open, professional dialogue and allow for adjustments to the inspection plan based on what inspectors are seeing. The afternoon continues with further evidence gathering and focused leadership meetings, including one with the designated safeguarding lead. These meetings, planned in advance, help inspectors to explore key areas such as inclusion and leadership in greater depth. The day will end with a final reflection meeting between inspectors and leaders. Typically, inspectors will leave the site at 5 p.m. Day 2 will start with a reflection meeting and will conclude with a grading meeting. Inspectors will gather evidence through inspection activities that have been confirmed at the end of day 1. There will be further learning walks and, where appropriate, case sampling, in keeping with our focus on pupils who are disadvantaged, those with SEND, and those who are most vulnerable. Professional dialogue will continue throughout the day, rooted in the evidence that is being gathered and in the inspection toolkit. These discussions will be ongoing through evidence gathering activities and in reflection meetings between inspectors and leaders, including the nominee where the school has chosen to have one. The final reflection meeting will be the formal grading meeting. This is when inspectors evaluate the evidence gathered, including that already shared and discussed at the reflection meetings. Provisional final grades will be determined based on a secure fit. This meeting will be followed by the final feedback meeting in which provisional grades, grounded in the evidence gathered, will be shared. This feedback will cover all the points that will appear in the written report card. I'm now going to talk you through some specific aspects. So we know that pupils attend alternative provision for a wide range of reasons. However, often alternative provision provides for some of the most vulnerable pupils within our communities. Inspectors will want to understand each alternative provision's context and core purpose. The lead inspector will use the planning call to really understand the nature of each provision. They will, with leaders, use this information to establish the most appropriate focus for inspection activities such as the learning walks. Inspectors want to hear from leaders about how they have identified and assessed pupils' needs. Inspectors will also review and evaluate a sample of commissioning agreements in relation to pupils' placements. As I mentioned just now, alternative provision often provides for some of society's most vulnerable pupils. Inspectors will make sure that there is sufficient time on inspection to fully understand the provision's safeguarding culture and processes. And finally, the toolkit clearly sets out that where a significant proportion of pupils join with previously low attendance or following disruption to their education, inspectors will recognise that this may affect the school's overall attendance or rates of persistent absence. Inspectors will pay particular attention to the impact of the school's work to improve attendance rapidly for these pupils and to maintain improvements over time. Inspectors also understand that for some APs, overtime can mean different things for different pupils due to the nature of the provision. As learning walks and other inspection activities are carried out, inspectors will continue to engage in professional dialogue with leaders to understand how the specific pupils or groups of pupils' needs and capabilities are being met. In this way, inspectors can celebrate successes, validate leaders' reflections, and highlight priorities for improvement. Inspectors will want to gather evidence relating to strong foundations, most relevant to the pupils in your setting. Inspectors will always want to evaluate the quality of your provision's work to help develop pupils' communication, reading, and mathematical knowledge. This may include phonics teaching and hearing some pupils read, where appropriate. Inspectors will also want to visit lessons in groups of subjects in which any specialised curriculum is being delivered to understand the quality of any suite of qualifications that give pupils a firm foundation for their future. The operating guide sets out clear consideration of pupils not in full-time on-site education. We understand that pupils at alternative provision often need considerable support for their personal development, often making up for gaps in their previous education. Inspectors will work with you to understand how your personal development programme, including the PSHE and careers programmes, meets the often complex needs of the pupils in your care and prepares them for their next stages of their education or employment. And finally, while not on the slide, I want to remind you that Ofsted will make the best use of Ofsted inspectors' current sector knowledge and experience by deploying them as team inspectors, placing greater emphasis on matching their expertise to the specific types of provision to complement the inspection expertise brought by His Majesty's inspectors. Our new approach builds on what we know are high effective evidence gathering activities. However, inspections will look and feel different as we build a more detailed understanding of an individual school's context from the outset. We will be celebrating what school leaders are proud of, validating their reflections, and highlighting with leaders what their priorities for improvement are. Inspectors will prioritise being out and about, around the school site, as soon as practicable on day one. While we are no longer carrying out deep dives, we will carry out learning walks, each with a focus that is based on what has been discussed in the planning calls and rooted in the school's context and leaders' priorities. Inspectors will carry out case sampling to get a detailed understanding of the school's provision for pupils who are disadvantaged, those with SEND, and those that are vulnerable. professional discussions, including those in reflection meetings, will be a key part of our new approach. Now I'll hand you back to Helen to talk you through the report cards and post-inspection arrangements. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. Let's have a look at our report cards. So we're bringing together the most popular preferences of parents and professionals by combining separate grades, rating scales, and short summaries into new report cards. You can see one on the screen. The narrative gives a detailed picture of performance, while the 5-point scale offers the clarity and simplicity that parents and carers asked for. We will publish data alongside the inspection report card to illustrate the provider and learner context and performance and attendance data over time, which will be used to inform evaluation grades. The data will differ for each remit and will be dependent on whether there is any data, but will be displayed in a consistent design. So at the end of the inspection, the lead inspector will write the report card, and that will reflect the evidence that's gathered, be clear, concise, and focused on what matters most, as informed by the school's context, leaders' evaluation of their school, and the toolkit. Explain the grade given for each evaluation area, make clear what the providers should improve, and be consistent with the verbal feedback given to the provider at the end of the inspection. The key message here is that the report card will really capture the most notable features and do so that is truly reflective of the provider and its context. Our post-inspection arrangements regarding report publication are the same as they were under the original education inspection framework. Report cards are sent to the school after moderation, quality assurance, and consistency checking. In most cases, this will be within 18 working days of the end of the inspection. Leaders should share inspection findings with all governors, trustees, and whoever else they consider appropriate. However, the information should not be made public or shared with parents until the school receives the final report card. And a few words about our approach to monitoring. We will monitor a school if we have graded any evaluation area as needs attention, it received a grade of requires improvement for its overall effectiveness, or for any key judgment at its last inspection before November 2025, or we have placed it in a category of concern. The nature and extent of this monitoring will be tailored to the context of the provider and the previous inspection findings. Monitoring will focus on supporting you to reach the expected standard in any evaluation area that we identified as needs attention or requiring urgent improvement. I'm going to hand you back to Claire now to talk through our implementation timeline.
Thank you, Helen. So our response to the consultation has been published, and you'll find that on gov.uk. We will be hosting a number of engagement events regionally, as well as hosting webinars like this one and attending sector events. All education inspectors will also be completing comprehensive training to support the transition to the renewed framework before being deployed on a live inspection. For openness and transparency, full inspector training materials will continue to be published online via the Ofsted Academy once inspectors have completed the face-to-face training. In addition to this training package, Ofsted will undertake pilot visits to volunteer settings, giving inspectors vital experience of full end-to-end inspections before November. These pilot visits will be quality assured by Ofsted's National Director for Education and Principal Inspector. We will resume routine inspections under the renewed framework in November as planned. During this period, we will maintain urgent inspection and regulatory activity in schools, early years, and further education and skills. We will also conduct a series of pilot inspections, giving inspectors the opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of the approach in practice. Standard inspections of independent schools are continuing through the first half of the autumn term to ensure that all schools receive a standard inspection within the current cycle, which began in January 2023. Additional inspections of independent schools will also continue as commissioned by the Department for Education. Standard inspections for non-association independent schools under the renewed framework will then begin in January 2026. When we begin inspections in November, we will do so through what we are calling our steady and assured start. In order to reassure education providers about the November rollout of inspections under the renewed inspection framework, we've set out several measures to support a steady and assured start and have a few inspections to begin with. Enhanced quality assurance process will see fewer inspections to begin with, led by only our most senior and experienced HM inspectors, assisted by Ofsted's permanent in-house teams. Part-time external Ofsted inspectors will be phased in following training. In the autumn term, a random sample of providers will be invited to take part in exit interviews with His Majesty's Chief Inspector Sir Martin Oliver, our National Director for Education, and senior Ofsted officials to hear about their inspection experience and reflect on the implementation of the reforms. His Majesty's Chief Inspector will also invite sector representatives to roundtable meetings to share their thoughts on the renewed framework as part of our commitment to transparency and listening to feedback. On occasion, we do receive requests from schools for the deferral of an inspection. During our steady and assured start, all requests for an inspection deferral will be reviewed by Ofsted's Deputy Chief Inspector to make sure each case is treated with utmost sensitivity and consideration. Our telephone helpline for leaders to raise queries and concerns will be open before, during, and after an inspection. And finally, measuring the impact of our changes. We will assess how our reforms are working by delivering a programme of evaluation to understand the implementation and impact of our reforms. The evaluation plan will include various elements, such as an externally commissioned evaluation of the renewed inspection framework. An independent supplier will deliver a baseline study in summer/autumn 2025, preliminary in-depth qualitative research in the spring term 2026, and a rolling evaluation survey carried out post-inspection to be continued each year. There will be a programme of work to measure our consistency. This includes testing consistency through HMI shadow inspections, a desk-based study using vignettes, and through data that informs the weekly consistency meetings. Further planned evaluation of the changes, such as engagement with parents and carers, providers and inspectors about the implementation of the framework, will also take place. Before we turn to questions, we'd just like to share a link there to the resources mentioned today. To find out more about the changes and what they mean for you, you can scan that QR code there. So we'll come to questions now, and we'll just pop our cameras back on for those. So thank you very much. I can see questions have been coming in and colleagues have been answering those throughout as well. We've had a couple about our approach to short and long-term alternative provision. Adam, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Claire, and thanks for those comments on short-term use of AP or more longer-term use. Of course, we understand that some APs are set up just to take children and pupils for a shorter amount of time, and for some children, that will be their main education, and they're more likely to be there for longer. I think this goes to the point we've raised about context. We are completely committed that inspectors will explore that with leaders at the start of the inspection process. And it might be that the typical approach of the AP is to take children for a short period of time, but they might have one or two pupils that they've been asked to take for longer, and that will all be considered when we build the inspection plan together. I think it focuses as well on context. We need to think as well about if those children have a different offer and why might they be there, and we'll consider that as well. For example, if a young person joins at the end of year 10, we might expect a different approach to if a child has been there for a longer period, and we'll consider that with leaders on these inspections.
Thanks very much, Adam. We've also had a couple of questions there about the inspection of unregistered alternative provision. Helen, did you want to take that one?
Yes, so unregistered and alternative provision we will continue to inspect in the same way that we inspect registered provision. There's been quite a few questions actually in the chat about will we always go to an alternative provision that's used by a school? We will always ask mainstream schools whether they are using alternative provision, which children are going to that alternative provision, the length of time that they're there, whether it's full-time, part-time, whether they're still on roll. And there are lots of reasons why we might go to visit that alternative provision or why we might not. So for instance, if we know that alternative provision has recently been inspected itself, we may not want to go and visit it and add to their inspection footprint. So there's lots of nuances around this. What I can guarantee, colleagues, is that we will be inspecting unregistered and registered in the same way. You can see Adam nodding his head.
Thanks very much, Helen. We've also had a couple of questions around the approach to children and young people in kinship care and those who are previously looked after. Adam, shall I come to you on that one?
Yeah, there's been a few questions in the chat that we can see here as well about the different groups of children that we're going to be focusing on. So I think it's really important that we highlight that those groups again here. So we're focused on 4 groups of children. And actually, what we're going to be seeking to explore on the ground is how providers work for those groups, and that is disadvantaged pupils, pupils with SEND, those known to and previously known to social care, and those who face other barriers to their learning and well-being. And we'll work to understand those barriers with providers and then craft inspection activities to understand the impact of those barriers on children and what's being done to reduce them. It's really important that you mentioned there, Claire, and a couple in the chat about kinship care, previously looked after, um, young carers as well, for example. And some of those children will fit into one of those groups that I've met. They might have social workers involved with them, but some may not. And so we'll work with leaders to discuss the children that are in your care, the barriers that they face, and what you're trying to do about those barriers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adam. We've also had quite a couple of questions around how outcomes for students will be measured. Helen, shall I bring that one to you?
Yeah, so what we're expecting all schools, including alternative provision, to be able to demonstrate is that they understand the starting points of all of their children and they are doing everything they possibly can to ensure that that young person achieves what they are able to achieve with the right sorts of support and guidance. Now, an alternative provision, that's obviously quite complicated because the spectrum of needs of those young people can be quite complex at times. The gaps in their learning might be quite small, they might be quite large. So, what we're looking for is an understanding of that AP, of what they have done to actually. Do some sort of assessment, and by that I don't mean examinations, but assessment of where that child is, what their needs are, what it is that you're aiming to achieve with that young person, whether it's reintegration back into their school, whether it's improving their attendance, whether it's focusing them in on a smaller selection of qualifications depending on their age, a huge range of things. So it isn't just about those end of key stage results or qualifications, it's that whole range. So what we're really looking for is your knowledge about the young people that are in your care and what you're doing to move them on to a point where they can achieve and move on to the next stage of their education training, or with older children and finding them some suitable employment when they leave you. So an achievement means a huge amount. It isn't just qualifications, it's that whole package that you would expect to be able to provide for a young person so that they are successful in whatever it is they want to do next.
Brilliant. Thank you, Helen. I think we've possibly got time for just one more. We've had a couple in the chat around case sampling, and how students will be selected for case sampling and when schools will know about that. I don't know who wants to jump in on that one, but perhaps we can cover that one.
Yep.
Go
Do
on,
you wanna
Adam, you
answer that
take
one,
that
Helen?
one. Yeah, we've had quite a few
That
questions on that.
yeah, yeah. That again is down to the specific context, and the lead inspector will work with you as leaders to select a sample of children. As ever, and we completely appreciate this, if there are children that are selected that, it might not be their best day, we might want to look at other evidence, we might want to consider their work, or look at other evidence alongside you as the people who know the children best. So we will work with you to select a sample of children. What I really need to say about case sampling, it's not case studies. So Martin has set out, as we have during this webinar, we don't expect providers to make anything ready for these inspections. Case sampling is going to seek to explore what you're using in your settings to learn about those children's needs, lay out a plan of action, and importantly, work with them to improve their experiences. So just wanted to say that really, colleagues, there's nothing expected there. And as ever, if anything comes up on inspection, just raise it with the lead inspector.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Well, that brings us pretty much to the end of our time today. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone for joining us to find out more about school inspection, and with that bit of extra focus on alternative provision. Um, as we've said, there's lots of other engagement events. So, please do continue to engage with us. We will be sharing the link to the YouTube recording of this session and also the slides afterwards as well. So a huge thank you to everyone for your time today. And thank you, Helen and Adam, for joining me for this session.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.